serial killers, dual timelines filled with romance and intrigue, dysfunctional families, and a guy with a donkey head. I'm Eric, this is Blessed and Bookmarked. Welcome if this is your first time here. It sounds like it's gonna be a really interesting May wrap-up video, and I know I'm late, it's already June, but better late than ever. So if you're looking for what may be your next favorite read, hit that like button and let's jump in, and I'm gonna save my favorite one to the end, so make sure you watch all the way through. Let's start with Count the Nights by the Stars. This is the dual timeline book that is set in Nashville, Tennessee. So you've got what is the present day timeline story where Audrey, the manager of the famous Maxwell House Hotel, is trying to uncover this mystery about one of their guests who is on the borderline of death. Then the book jumps back to 1897 and we follow that same guest. Her name's Priscilla, and the things that are going on in her life. One of the things I enjoyed most about this book is trying to piece together the puzzle. Some of the things were really obvious, but some of the other things you didn't kind of see coming into all the way at the end. There are themes throughout this book such as love, family, class, community, and of course, faith. But I was really kind of hooked by the mystery aspect of it. And as you're reading, more and more clues are uncovered both for the characters and for the readers. We don't know everything right off the bat. And while some of the things at the end are like troubling and there are some trigger warnings that maybe you should look into, I really think that it was a really good book. But if that book slowly kind of draws you in, the next one just grabs you by the shirt and yanks you into the story. And that is 3 by Ted Dekker. This book follows Kevin Parsons, who is a seminary student who all of a sudden starts receiving phone calls and messages from somebody who is demanding that he confess publicly his darkest sin. And if he doesn't, people are going to start to die. Right from the beginning, you're asking yourself, like, what in the world is going on? Right in the beginning, a car explodes and things just get crazier and crazier and crazier from there. This is one of those type of psychological thrillers or like true crime kind of investigation kind of things. And as you're reading, you're trying to figure out what all of this means and how this is connected and what's Kevin's big secret. And just when you think you have it figured out, just when the book is kind of leading you on, boom, it drops another big like twist that most people never see coming. And certainly there was a bigger spiritual connection to this. Ted Dekker is, after all, a Christian writer. He's just not like super on the nose or super explicit about Christian themes. You kind of have to like read between the lines a little bit, but it certainly talks about things like sin and our past, confession, guilt, and how we deal with these things in our lives and the effect that a hidden sin or a dark past can have in our lives if we don't bring it to the Lord. And that ending, it is absolutely insane. I read this book as part of the book club that I run with the youth group at my church, but I first read this book like 20 years ago, and I can still vividly remember that ending, and I reread it now, and it was exactly the way I remembered it. That's how good it was. And after reading a book like that, some people might need a palate cleanser, and that's what I needed. So I read a book with magical fairies and love potion flowers and a dude with a donkey head. Yeah, if you haven't guessed it, I'm talking about A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I genuinely enjoy Shakespeare and I try to read him as often as I possibly can, but I did read this as part of my profession. I'm an English teacher in high school, so I read it with my high school seniors and they really loved it, and I forgot how funny this book can be, or this play can be at sometimes. And every time I read Shakespeare, I'm always telling myself I have to read more Shakespeare, and I do have like tons of Shakespeare books here in the background, but I want to make it my mission to read more Shakespeare more often. As for this play specifically, it's very fitting now that we're moving into summertime, but it is just completely ridiculous and insane. So many funny things and wild antics and mix-ups and all these things happen in this play that it's just iconic for some of its lines, but also its storyline is pretty wild. A lot of people think of Shakespeare and they're pulling their hair out because of the language, or they think it's boring. But once you really get a hang to it and even read it out loud and give characters different accents and all that kind of stuff, you kind of really get into it and you see some of the humor come through. But eventually I had to leave the magical forest behind and come back to reality and shift to something completely different. The next book was right on the cusp of the beginning of May, but I'm going to count it anyway because I haven't talked about it here on the channel, and that is None Like Him by Jen Wilkin. So this is nonfiction, and the topic is the attributes of God, specifically the attributes that belong only to God. Not things that he shares with us or that we can reflect to a certain degree, but things that are unique to him. Things like his sovereignty, his eternality, his unchanging nature, things like that. And what I like about this book is the accessibility of it. Wilkin does a great job writing in a very colloquial style. It feels like you're talking to one of your friends. She has anecdotes and jokes and things like that, but she doesn't shy away from really getting into some of the weightier things while never losing sight of that practical application. Not only does she focus on the attributes of God, and it's not like some like big info dump kind of thing, but it's also how we often attempt to mimic those attributes in our life when we were never meant to, and the problems and chaos that can cause. I definitely recommend this book for anybody who's interested in studying about God's character more and is looking for a book that is both profound and practical at the same time. And the next book that I'm going to include in this wrap up is the one that I enjoyed reading the most, and it is This Ain't No Promised Land by Tina Shelton. Like I said, this is the one that stuck with me the most, and the story centers around 3 generations of women who are growing up in Chicago. They're all carrying around different wounds and regrets and pasts and mistakes, and they're just kind of like trying to figure out how to deal with these things in life. They all fail at it miserably many times, but they don't give up, and I think that's one of the things that's most important. But what I really liked about this book was the dialogue. Man, it just felt so real. It felt like I was listening to a conversation rather than reading one. Like I was just there in the story. The characters are all unique. They're all very real. They're completely deeply flawed people, but aren't we all? And I think that's kind of like the point of the book in many ways, where we're just tend to kind of morally look down on some characters just because they're not real people, but at the same time these people are acting like many people have acted many times. And even the characters where you're rooting for them and you're like, yeah, this guy's like the moral standard in the story, make terrible choices. They're messy and unpolished, but I think that's kind of like the point. It's not about perfect people who never make mistakes. It's about imperfect people who are just trying to find out what to do next. It's about how through faith and family and certainly God's grace, we don't have to be defined by our past and our mistakes and our sins, but that we can move forward onto something better. So yeah, these are some of the books that I've been reading recently. A historical novel, a psychological thriller, a Shakespearean comedy, a theology book, and a contemporary fiction novel. All very different, but they all had an impact on me in one way or another. And so I thought I would share them with you. If you've read any of these books or find any of them interesting, please, let's have a conversation. I want to talk to you. I know you guys are already here and you're watching if you gotten to this point. So let's talk about a few of them and see which one you thought was the most interesting. And if you've got recommendations for me, drop them down below. I'm always looking for something else to read. So please let me know what's a good read that you think I would like based off these books. And if you're into historical fiction, I've already done like a deep dive into one book here called When the Waters Came by Candace Sue Patterson. Awesome book, awesome writer, awesome person. She's helped me out in a giveaway in the past. So I'll leave a link to that as well so you can check it out here at the end. Or if you're looking for something with a bit more controversy, I did a review on the first 3 books of Pierce Brown's Red Rising trilogy, which a lot of people have very strong feelings about. If you're interested in that, I'll also leave the video here at the end. Thanks again for watching. My name is Eric. Love having you here. Stay blessed, stay bookmarked.